Hi, it's Tuesday, February 13th, and this is another episode of the Zogby Report, real and unscripted. We haven't been around in a little while because there's been an awful lot going on in our business lives. And so here we are, we're back, and we're ready, I guess, as anybody can possibly be to talk about politics, talk about the presidential race. How you doing, Jer?
I'm doing well. I'm curious where you're going to take this.
Yeah, me too. But let's start with the kind of the difficult one, actually the easy one. Uh, this firm, John Zogby Strategies, through you, our managing partner, are polling for Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Is that correct?
Yeah.
I know the answer. But basically, you have a wife and 4 kids and a very busy life and other clients. And you don't go through your daily routine saying, I wonder how Bobby would do it. I wonder what Bobby would say. I wonder what Bobby is thinking right now. How do I mold and shape everything I do to comport with Bobby Kennedy and what Bobby Kennedy would do and how I should do it? That doesn't govern your life, does it?
No, because we've always polled politics, right? You've always
Yeah.
polled candidates, but we've been lucky not being party pollsters to
Mm-hmm.
be, front seat on the campaign, working only for the campaign. We're independent, and that's where we get our accuracy and objectivity from. So, and look, campaigns are chaotic. They will take your life over, and we have a business to run. So, no, I don't. And the purpose of our data, especially in a race like this, is to offer a temperature check.
Yeah.
Just like the person who goes to the doctor or goes to whatever their healthcare specialist is, and give me my blood pressure, check my temperature, check my vitals, and not necessarily, now what do I do from here, where the healthcare person says, well, you need this vitamin and that vitamin, you need to go out and you need to eat this food and make sure you're getting enough healthy fats. And so we are providing independent analysis of where the campaign stands in the political landscape, the rapidly changing political landscape. But as you highlighted, we maintain our clients. So
that's how I started it. It is 40 years now. And the definition is best thing that we can do for our clients, whether it's a presidential candidate, a major arts center in Florida, or a pizza parlor, is to offer the most accurate data and the most sophisticated analysis that is helpful and useful to them, period.
And it's up to them how they want to run and strategize with it.
That's absolutely correct. All right. With that said, then, let's talk about the presidential race. And the issue of the moment is age, right? And obviously, the special prosecutor in the Biden case indicated that there were possibly indictable actions on the part of the president when it came to uh, uh, taking home with him as vice president some highly secure files. But he decided not to indict. Everybody knows why. He said he would be an old, well-meaning fellow with a short memory and would come off actually as a sympathetic character rather than as someone who should go to jail and go to trial in his 80s. And of course, everybody knows the uproar about that. I think that the special prosecutor way overstepped his bounds. He was supposed to be looking simply at possible indictable crimes or not indictable crimes, and that when it came into delving into the personal behavior and nature of the President of the United States, he was out of bounds, and that was, in fact, gratuitous and a cheap shot. just from you and I chatting over the weekend, I guess you might see that differently.
Um, well, I mean, who hasn't in these last 8 years? Who hasn't stepped out of bounds, right? Who who has maintained exactly their job description and has laid down the law as it should be, colorblind, party blind, and everything? Who has done that? Who has offered us a roadmap to justice? What we're witnessing started with 2016. Look, we have bigger problems that go far back, but if we talk about the surface level of this disease, everything really started with the inability of the communications infrastructure within this country to understand their opposition, named Donald Trump and his MAGA supporters. They have never, the old rule in warfare and in politics, which unfortunately, in reality, sometimes there's a blurred line. I mean, war is politics, politics is war. But if you want to engage in civilized warfare, civilized politics, you have to understand your enemy. You have to understand your opposition. In politics, let's not use the term enemy. Let's use the term opposition. And the DNC and the media, the mainstream media, the corporate media, whatever you want to call it, you know what I'm talking about, did not, could not, and didn't want to. And that's what kicked off what became a whirlpool that is still with us, that created, look, Newton said it, every action creates an equal and opposite reaction.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. Was that a cheap shot on the part of the special prosecutor, or legitimate business as usual?
I've seen nothing but cheap shots. I don't know. I mean, I've never been in that position, so I don't know. I don't know what the precise rules of the game for a special counsel are. Most Americans probably haven't even heard of a special counsel until John Durham, when it became a part of our everyday vernacular, when Trump was always on trial. Trump was on trial for this. Trump was on trial for that. Trump said this. Trump said that. Get him. He's crazy. Get him out of office. He doesn't deserve to be here. The Russians hacked the election. The Russians influenced the election. Mass hysteria bred a response of further mass hysteria. And the point of this is, look out for 2024. It's coming to a major headway. So it doesn't surprise me that that this is finally stumbling. Biden's finding himself almost in a situation like Trump. But let me make this point. Politics aside, and I've said this, I say this over and over, but you won't find my name on a voter list because I don't vote, because I analyze politics. I don't get emotionally involved in politics. The worst mistake, this is my advice to anybody, the worst mistake is to get emotionally involved in politics, because politics, especially in the digital era, is a digital circus. And so the point that I'm trying to drive home, having no emotional skin in this game, I was able to see very early on that there is an age problem with Biden. That wasn't because of my hatred for Biden. That wasn't because of my denial of the reality, and that, oh no, that can't be. Biden he's so moderate in his temperament. He's so presidential. He's so experienced. I could remove all of that and look at and see this is a very aging person. I saw it in 2019, in late 2018 on the campaign trail. That for him, the trail to winning the Democratic candidacy, and I could see it with each passing year, each passing month, and I've often cited that there was a particular moment in July of 2022 where the New York Times came out with 2 headlines questioning his age. And I said, that's the beginning. I said it on this podcast. Watch for this. Now, I knew that it wasn't a Wile Coyote moment where he was going to go off the cliff, because you can't do that. You can't attack a sitting president and undo his presidency into, within a matter of 2 weeks. That would create a vacuum. That would create chaos. It is a death by political death, not biological. It was a political death by 1,000 cuts. And we are now at the point where Biden has had 900 and something gashes, and he's toast. Look, in a sense, he did it to himself, okay? Just by virtue of being too old to run, but he wanted the glory. He got the glory, but he got the glory at the very end of his career. And so, look, you have to call a spade a spade. You have to call a club, a diamond, a diamond. He is very old, and he is incompetent because of his age to run the country as we head into the most tumultuous time of our nation's history in the last 100 or at least 75 years. No question about that. So I'm going to leave aside, no, they shouldn't have done this, they shouldn't have done that. People are finally acknowledging, voters are finally acknowledging in masses that we can't do this. We can't have him at the helm of the ship. So, where that goes, I'll let you pick up with, what happens, how it happens, and whatever you see fit.
Okay, kind of in bullet form. So first and foremost, age already was an issue. I don't believe the media is driving it. I think it's actually being pushed from the bottom up. Polls have been clear really right from the outset of the 24 campaign that, 3 out of 4 people don't want either candidate. A solid majority feel that both are too old to be seeking a second term as president. That's actually being driven by the public. And of course, the media is reinforcing it. But the media, can kind of lay out the agenda and provide the video for folks. But I think the public drives it. Secondly, it was not within the purview of a special prosecutor investigating potential crimes to talk about the personal life of the president of the United States, just as it isn't the purview of a district attorney who is called a grand jury to release private results of depositions where 80% of the depositions are, I don't know, I can't recall, I'm not sure, I don't recall. That's just standard operating procedure. And so I have to say that what Mr. Herr got out of it was that he'll be a regular on the cocktail circuit, Republican cocktail circuit in New York and Washington, and he will burnish his career credentials because on one hand he didn't indict the president or recommend it, but on the other hand he did the proper partisan thing. But here's my problem. I don't think any president can handle the next 4 years. I mean, we are watching tumult and unprecedented tumult in such a short period of time. Even before we get into AI, there is so much before us that is failing and that Americans are losing trust. Our institutions, and I just don't mean parties and politicians and government agencies. I'm talking about the gamut of institutions. Americans have lost trust in those. And I don't believe that one person can arise and be a savior. But I also don't believe that these two men are the people who should be attempting to lead and kind of transitioning us into the next era, particularly when they've had their chance, and Joe Biden himself called himself a transitional figure. And so that's the problem I have with this election. Now, one obvious question: is Joe Biden finished after the special prosecutor's report? Interestingly, the polling that's been done in the last couple of days suggests that the race is tightening. That whereas Trump had been leading by 3-4 points, as many as 5-6 points, that now the average of the most recent polls is actually a 1-point race. Biden leading by 1 here and there, or tied. Trump leading by 1 or 2 here and there. It's very slight within the margin of error average lead for Donald Trump. But I think voters are going to be much more driven by voting against a candidate than they are energized and inspired to vote for a president. My final point on this matter, and then I have one other thing that I want to talk about, is that I still say that Biden has a record to run on, a record that has helped the country avoid major disasters, has allowed Americans to spend, and has allowed everything from inflation to go down, unemployment to go down, the number of people in the workforce to go up, wages to surpass the rate of inflation, infrastructure projects that haven't even hit yet, but will hit during election year, and in places like Nevada and Arizona and Michigan and Wisconsin. And so this race is not over by any stretch.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess what I do here, and this is typically how we do it, is I say, you challenge what I say, and then in your responses, I challenge back. In order, was it driven by the people in terms of the perception of Biden's age, or was it driven by the media? Well, of course, if you asked Republicans, they were saying, well, he's brain dead, right? Independents, I'll just be conservative in my guesstimation, because I can't aggregate all of the polls that have been done over the last 3 years, but independents were probably on the fence. Some of them agreed, some of them disagreed. Democrats were in total disagreement. I would say in total denial. They did not want to hear about that. But then, as that very pivotal moment that I keep talking about with the New York Times, that started it all, because then you started to see a whole string of polls come out. We're asking whether Biden deserved re-election or not. And the percentage would be anywhere from 40 to 50%. And this was being published on CNN and the Washington Post, New York Times, poll after poll after poll. Biden doesn't deserve re-election. Half of Americans think so. What that says is nearly all Republicans were in agreement, and just enough independents were tilting that way. But then what we started to see recently, over the last several weeks or few months, were more and more Democrats finally getting on board with that notion, and more or less being in alignment with the independent voters who made up their mind Biden is too old. Where does that come from? I can only think that it came from the string of polls and the increasing negative media coverage, because before that, the media didn't want to talk about that. They wanted to avoid that. Then they started shining a light. This is my interpretation. Of course, people are going to agree or disagree. Your question as to Mr. Herr and whether he did right or wrong, I don't know the law. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a legal thinker. But my question to that is, and this is for people to chew on, is, are there double standards? Are we starting to see double standards? Have we seen double standards? Have we seen unfairness practiced towards certain political um, um, members of a certain political party? And have we seen fairness across the board? Well, I don't think so. I think maybe this is the first time that Biden has had a taste of what the former president had to deal with for a number of years. Of course, I know he brought that on himself. I'm not defending him. Three more things. Inflation. You can look at inflation year over year, and I think that that's basically tantamount to cherry picking, because you can look at it year over year. You can look at it over the last 2 years. You can look at it since Biden took office. You can look at it going back 2016. Look at it on a lot of different scales or timelines. And what you'll find is the one that shows the lowest is the year over year. But in reality, inflation is creeping and creeping and creeping. Employment, we find time and time again that a lot of these jobs being created are temp jobs. A lot of these jobs being created are part-time jobs without benefits. What we also know is that the formula for determining the unemployment rate is a little bogus. It has to fit certain parameters. Those who say they've dropped out of the workforce, well, why would you not count those? Those are what we would call that would be your bottom caste in a caste system. That would be your give uppers. That would be your Americans who think the American dream is dead. Wouldn't you want to count those folks in the unemployment rate? Why would we cut them out? Oh, well, I know why. Because it lowers the unemployment rate. Wages. This is the last data point, and this is very important. Median income has risen, sure, but why has it risen? We are in a bifurcated economy. A bifurcated economy is an economy where those at the top of the pyramid get a larger and larger piece of the economic pie, while the bottom 99 or 90%, we'll say 90, the bottom 90% get less and less. They get poorer. It's because of inflation. Inflation is an engine to transfer wealth to the top. It's always been that way. So what's happening is the incomes of the top 10% are inflating the average and the median. What if we were just to see, what if we looked at the median and the average income of the bottom 90%? How much is that, those who make over six figures, inflating that number? So true, those who are making six figures and more are doing better. Hence why a pollster asked the typical question, are things headed in the right direction, the wrong direction? You're going to get like 20% who are saying it's headed in the right. Those are people who are basically with master's degrees, with doctorates, entrepreneurs who are doing well, and those who make six figures. But for the rest of Americans who aren't making six figures, they are doing terrible. They're doing terribly.
Okay, I have one more thing because we haven't been on in a while. So I'm watching very, very closely New York Congressional District number 3. That's George Santos' seat, and held by a Republican. And Tom Suozzi, former candidate for governor, former congressman from much of that current district, running against very interesting Republican councilwoman, Mazie Pilip, who has an interesting personal story. We're looking at it because if the Democrats pick up, that will be a series of off-year elections that Democrats have been picking up. Also looking at it because the Republican majority in the House of Representatives is down to 3. It'll be down to 2 if Tom Suozzi wins. And then obviously we're looking at it as a prefigure for next year. What's fascinating to me about this is that the number 1 and number 2 issues are immigration and crime. And that's less of a direct impact on Mineola and parts of Long Island, although yes, an impact, much more of an impact on nearby New York City. and the perception that the border is out of control. And so we're watching it. As I speak, there are two polls that show Swazi ahead, one 52-48 and the other 48-44. I'm going to suggest, of course, a lot of people aren't going to watch this or hear it until election results are in, but I just have a feeling we may be talking about an election that's too close to call by the end of this evening. Any thoughts? And because I'm done.
No, I trust your judgment because I haven't looked at the polling, or maybe you're saying you haven't either. It's just your hunch. I wouldn't know, so I will trust your judgment on that.
Okay, that's how it should be. All right, thanks, Jer. I had a lot of fun. Take care.
Yeah, no, I think it's important that we continue to talk about the most controversial topics of the day, and to do it in a manner where we can still be father and son and business partners at the end of the day. As always, we're trying to mirror, we're trying to set the example. I think this is the kind of life we as a nation want to lead. And I don't think we want anything different from that.
I totally agree, but I'm the father and you're the son. Don't ever forget it. All right.
Of course.
You're great. I love listening to you. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.